So it turns out people don't like these episodes.
Welcome to another D3 Datacast. You can follow us at D3 Datacast at any and all of that social media garbage. But Matt, can you believe it? This is part 7 of our Division 3 basketball trading card series. We've got 5 more packs today. This will start with number 26 overall in our series. We are marching right along, and after this one, I think we'll be in the home stretch.
Part 7, it's almost like we had too many parts to the series.
All right, so let's jump in here. The first pack, 26 overall, as I mentioned. First up is the Center Colonels.
Center out of the SAA in Danville, Kentucky. Things were a little bit of a step back for Center these last few seasons. They were 5-20. That's their first single-digit win total in like 15 plus years, I think.
Next up, we have the Lakeland Muskies.
Yeah, Lakeland's out of the NACC in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. That's the Northern Athletics Collegiate Conference.
Next card is our first insert card in this pack. This is the D3 Threads mini series. Matt, we've got a little swatch here from the Great Lakes Invitational Swag, which included I believe they call that a toque in Canada.
Oh, okay. I don't know what Canada has to do with any of this, but yeah, the Great Lakes Invitational, we've talked about it being a great tournament. Ryan does a great job of getting some swag for the participants. This edition here we have featured here has those nice beanie hats, those winter hats with that nice relic card of that knitted material. So great experience for the participants of the Great Lakes Invitational out there.
All right, next card is back to the team base set with the Gordon Fighting Scots.
Gordon out of the Commonwealth Coast Conference, the CCC, Wenham, Massachusetts. Zach, don't sleep on the Commonwealth Coast Conference. I feel like that's a conference that doesn't get a lot of discussion throughout the year, but they've got some pretty good teams in there.
Absolutely. All right, speaking of good teams from conferences that might get slept on a little bit, post St. Thomas there, the Carleton Knights.
Yeah, Carleton out of the Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference from Northfield, Minnesota. They were 24-4 last season, which was their first 20-plus win season since 05-06. So Carleton definitely was a program on the rise last year, got into the NCAA tournament first round. So great to see out of the Knights.
Here we have the Houghton Highlanders.
Houghton's out of the Empire 8, Houghton, New York. They've been in Division 3 for about a dozen or so years, and we're still searching for that first winning season for Houghton.
UMass Dartmouth Corsairs up next.
Yeah, Mass Dartmouth out of North Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and the Little East Conference.
Shenandoah is our next team base card here, the Hornets.
Winchester, Virginia, they're in the ODAC. We've talked about the ODAC being a deep, strong league. Shenandoah is one of those schools out there in Virginia.
Portland Red Dragons up next.
Yeah, Cortland out of the SUNYAC. There's been some changes just announced for the SUNYAC coming up in the future for that conference. Very nice season for Cortland last year, 19-8 overall.
Eastern Connecticut Warriors, our next card here.
Yeah, Eastern Connecticut out of the Little East. We just had Mass Dartmouth a few slides previous. They're from Willimantic, Connecticut. And in my mind, like Eastern Connecticut and Western Connecticut oscillate over who's going to have the 20-win season. Last year it was Western Connecticut, so maybe Eastern Connecticut next year. I think that's how things go.
In Connecticut, how far can East and West really be that far apart?
Yeah, it's
all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anywho, Augsburg Augies.
Yeah, another MIAC team, a Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference program, and they're right there in Minneapolis, Minnesota for Augsburg.
And our other insert here in the major moment set, Matt, we've looked at some other ones, turning back the clock at previous championship teams celebrating, decade anniversaries here, just going back one decade to Amherst Championship.
Yeah, very good program. One of the top programs in Division 3. They've not been quite at the top the last couple of seasons, but here we see 10 years ago they were celebrating a national championship. That's a program that's been to Final Fours. We saw Dave Hickson make the Basketball Hall of Fame. So great program and great to celebrate their 2013 national championship here.
Yep, and that concludes Pack 27. So rolling right along to concludes 26. Now on to 27, starting off with the Hunter Hawks.
Hunter out of the Cognac, the City University of New York Athletic Conference. They're right there in New York City. They were a system team the last couple of years, but they're going through a coaching change, it looks like. So we'll have to see what kind of ball they play going forward.
The MIT Engineers are next.
The NEWMAC Conference, New England Women's and Men's Athletic Conference. Cambridge, Massachusetts is MIT, of course. And they were a team that had established themselves among the Division III elite, although kind of since COVID, their program has been not at that level. And last year, it was actually just a 4-19 season for MIT. And that, that's not where they had been used to. So I'm really interested to see what they can do in the NEWMAC going forward. I expect that program to rise back up at some point.
Suffolk Rams is our next team-based card set.
Yes,
here.
staying in Massachusetts here, Boston for Suffolk, the Commonwealth Coast Conference, another CCC program, 6-10 in 2023, which is kind of about their high water mark for the last 10 or 15 years.
Staying on the East Coast here, the Williams Eafs.
Yeah, Williams out of the NESCAC, Williamstown, Massachusetts. Big rivalries to Amherst, who we just saw Amherst National Championship card a little while back. And Williams is just another one of these top programs in Division III. I think they've established themselves, the NESCAC, being also one of the top conferences in our conference ratings. So Williams is just one of those programs you think about when you think about D3 basketball.
The Austin Kangaroos is our next card here. The Roos.
Austin's in the SCAC, and I feel like I've been lied to, Zach. They are in Sherman, Texas, which is not anywhere near Austin, Texas. Sherman, Texas is north of like Dallas-Fort Worth, and that's not close to Austin, Texas. But I think they're all both named after Stephen F. Austin, who kind of was like a European settler of Texas. So I kind of get that. But also, like, if your name is Austin, you should be in Austin. So I feel like I was misled until I looked it up for this slide.
Okay, we'll note that and file that complaint with the proper authorities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Matt, one of our provisionals here, the Hartford Hawks. They were in their first provisional year in 22-23.
Hartford's not a team we've talked about much in Division III. They're just in that provisional process. They're transferring from D1. This is the Hartford you saw in the NCAA tournament Division I a few years back. I don't think it's been that many years since they made a tournament. And they're going to be joining the Commonwealth Coast Conference as well. And 2 more provisional years to go before they're fully integrated into the D3 system, but it'll be interesting to see what this program transitions like into Division III. We've had several others in the past. Most recently that I can remember is like Centenary was a former D1 program that is now a D3 program. So you don't come in and immediately like run the floor with D3. You got to change the way your program and your athletics department operates, and that is definitely a process.
The Carnegie Mellon Tartans are our next card.
Yeah, one of these strong UAA programs. They're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 7-7 in conference last season, which seems like middle of the road until you realize it's the UAA, because that was actually a game ahead of Rochester, who was a Pool C at-large berth team into the NCAA tournament. So Carnegie Mellon was right there in the mix in the regional rankings as well all season long.
I don't know anything about this card.
Nope. Cover your eyes, everyone. Random Twitter people, Zach Snyder. We had to placate him with a card here. When you look up your Beckett Guide value cost cards, this is like the one that's down there as like 1 cent. They just made $1 trillion. There's common cards. It's not rare.
I'd be happy to autograph any copies to make them even wipe away that 1 penny value. All right, moving on.
So the face you're making in this card is the face people make when they open their pack and they get a Zach Snyder card. It's like, what is this?
Oh, yeah. An insert card's supposed to be special. This is classic filler. That's just, got to get some out there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Back to the team base set here. Ohio Wesleyan, the Battling Bishops.
North Coast Athletic Conference for Ohio Wesleyan here in Delaware, Ohio. And they're just kind of one of those Ohio blue bloods, North Coast Athletic Conference programs, usually in the mix, never bad kind of teams. And they're somewhere between like, you can usually find them up and around the top 100, top quarter of Division III every year. And then they'll have like these years where they kind of burst through and start like battling with the Worcesters in their conference for kind of Ohio supremacy as well.
Concordia, Wisconsin Falcons.
Yeah, Concordia, Wisconsin, out of Mequo, Wisconsin. Excuse my voice. My voice has been cracking a lot. Like I'm just finally changing my voice. They're in the Northern Athletics Conference. We've had a couple of Northern Athletics cards, I think, in this episode, and Concordia, Wisconsin is one of those as well. I think Calvin opponent for this upcoming season.
All right, and finally, an insert card worth having in this pack here, Matt. Content Kings highlighting the John Jay broadcast, one of the fine broadcasts that we have access to watch Division III basketball games.
Yeah, a lot of interesting broadcasts out there. They run the gamut from just like basically a camera with no broadcaster, sometimes no sound, or sometimes they're fully well-produced broadcasts. And we talk a lot about like Max Live. The Yeshiva broadcast is very well done. John Jay is one of those as well. John Jay, as you can see from this card here, they have professional looking broadcasters. They have coaches interviews. I think they have different camera angles and cameras throughout the game. Just a very well done broadcast from John Jay, and definitely one worth checking out if you get a chance this upcoming season.
Are we ever going to be professional looking?
No, we will not be.
Okay, great. All right, one more card for this pack. The Lynchburg Hornets, our second Hornets of the day.
And our second ODAC of the day, I believe, Lynchburg, Virginia, for Lynchburg in Lynchburg, Virginia. And their team, they've had definitely some great good seasons. This last year wasn't really one of them. They kind of got lost toward the bottom of a strong and deep ODAC conference.
On to pack 28 now, Matt. Leading off, we have Nichols Bison. I feel like you've been setting up something that you want to talk about here with Nichols Bison.
Yeah, I think like at least our third Commonwealth Coast Conference card in this pack. It's always funny how you get like a run of a certain conference in an episode here. Dudley, Massachusetts. I just went back. I think it's 10 non-COVID years of 20-plus win seasons for Nichols. We can't ignore them on the national stage. They were Elite Eight last year. They've been in the tournament and making runs in the tournament several times. It's not a team that's just a fluke. I sometimes like the computers aren't necessarily enamored with them, even though they've rated well, but they haven't rated like an Elite Eight team. But we can't sleep on Nichols anymore, and I know that their fans are going to blow up in my Twitter mentions every season because I somehow do sleep a little bit on Nichols. But it's a great program. I mean, has become one of the best and most exciting to watch programs in Division III. And there's been some talk that maybe they're going to make a Division II move. And I always selfishly hope that doesn't happen because I like having Nichols in Division III. They've been a fun team to watch. Like one of the most fun tournament runs last season was the Nichols run, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think their run was one of the more fun ones to watch. And maybe just, because they did fall in the Elite Eight, didn't make that Final Four run, maybe gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. So good to highlight the run they had because it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. SUNY Maritime Privateers.
Yeah, SUNY Maritime's in the Skyline Conference, and they're from Throgs Neck, New York. Zach, I had not been familiar with Throgs Neck, New York. I think it's a neighborhood in the Bronx, but that just sounded like an awesome name. Throgs Neck.
That's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
Another major moments here, Matt. This one highlights a major moment that was as early in the season as you could get. Worcester State and WPI met at midnight, a game tipping off as soon as possible in that very fun first game of the season.
Yeah, literally the minute it was allowed to tip off, they did. We saw Christopher Newport and Mount Union in the final game of the season. This card commemorates game one of the season, WPI Worcester State. Great to have that midnight tip-off, I think. I don't believe I stayed up for it last year. I'm considering it this year. I'm an old man though now, so we'll see if I make it through all the way. But it's great that this exists. If you're in college, you love this because you're not going to go to bed at midnight anyway. So I think I'm guessing the students get into this and have fun with it, and it just seems like a great event to have kind of these two programs kind of cross town be able to do this. I think that's fun.
Back to the team base set with the Whittier Poets.
Yeah, Whittier came up last episode, I think it was. You talked about how Whitman and Whitworth are separated by Whittier, alphabetized. That's a thing that no one cares about that's not currently on this episode. But yeah, they're in the SCIAC, the Southern Collegiate Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. If I said that correctly, Whittier, California. I think the name Poets is fun. We don't get a lot of poets. It's a very academic name, I think. So fun to celebrate Whittier here as the Poets.
Glad you enjoyed that one. All right, Cabrini Cavaliers.
Yeah, Cabrini plays in the Atlantic East Conference from Radnor, Pennsylvania, Zach, and I think this is our final go-around for Cabrini. It's been announced that they are going to be closing after the upcoming academic year. So we did get 1 year warning. Some other schools like Finlandia and Madai, we didn't really get to know that until, I mean, we had maybe some warnings for some of those schools, but not till the middle or end of the school year. Kind of basketball season was already maybe finished when we heard about those schools. Cabrini, we know 1 more year, so it's going to be kind of a farewell tour for them. I hope they have a positive season. I hope the players, student athletes have a positive season, a positive experience. And unfortunately, that we're seeing some of these school closures just kind of becoming a little bit of the norm in Division III and around the country in all aspects.
Well said. The Endicott Gulls are up next.
Endicott, another Commonwealth Coast Conference team, Beverly, Massachusetts. It's been a CCC heavy episode, and important to highlight that conference because there's some good ball played there.
Speaking of a conference where there's some good ball played, Matt, the MIAA, here we have the Albion Britain.
Yep, Michigan Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Albion's in Albion, Michigan. Makes sense there. A house of horrors for visiting teams to play in generally. Historically speaking, bad things happen when you go to Albion to play. They always play tough at home. You don't want to play them there. Although we do have a couple of good memories in our history of games at Albion. We also have some disappointing defeats as well. So tough to play. Tough place to play at Kresge Gymnasium there. Historic.
The historic
Kresge
Gymnasium.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay, the Knox Prairie Fire are up next. I think one of the better names there, the Prairie Fire.
Yeah, another good nickname. Galesburg, Illinois. They're in the Midwest Conference. And they're kind of a team, though, that's had difficulty climbing out of the basement of the Midwest Conference. So it's kind of some tough runs here for Knox. We'll see if they can have a little bit more success going forward.
All right, Matt, I feel like it's been a while since we've revisited the National Committee set. Finally seeing it pop up back here with John Alisi, head coach at Baruch and the representative to the National Committee.
Yeah, always great to see the good work that the National Committee does. Great to be able to interact with some of them at Fort Wayne, or at least just kind of see them observe the tournament that they help put together, and then kind of relax through like such a nice weekend last year's Final Four was. The games were excellent, and just to be able to see the committee members like, hey, this worked out, this was really good, this was really fun. I think that was an enjoyable experience for me as an outsider. Also, just love the sport coat that John's wearing here in this card.
Did you need to see that they were real people? Is that it, Matt?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just see them as the people who put out the rankings. So, yeah.
All right, back to the team-based set. Rhode Island College, the Anchormen.
Yeah, out of Providence, Rhode Island.
I don't believe they play it. Not in San Diego.
No. And they're out of the Little East Conference. Had a couple other Little East Conference mates. But yeah, that's Rhode Island College.
Ithaca Bombers.
Ithaca's out of the Liberty League in Ithaca, New York. And Bombers is another name that maybe is one of one in Division III. I don't know if there's another Bombers out there.
That sounds like a future episode. Okay, the Mustangs of Morrisville State.
They're playing in the UEC, the United East Conference. We talked about that conference getting bigger next year, absorbing the CSAC, essentially. They're kind of merging together. But they're from Morrisville, New York.
All right, farewell Pac-28 on to Pac-29. Leading off is team base card, the Berry Vikings.
Southern Athletic Association, SAA, Mount Berry, Georgia. Berry's a team that had a very strong year last year. Very difficult to get in the rankings, though, at Region 6. They found themselves out despite a very stellar record. It looks like they're improving their schedule strength next year, so we're going to be looking at what does Berry's record and SOS look like next year, hoping for improvements from them in those regards.
All right, now we have an insert card highlighting some of the Division III rivalries. And Matt, I'm always interested in the ones that aren't, kind of the natural rivalries that form within a conference. Yeah. Here we have one of those that's between schools in different conferences, that being WashU and Illinois Wesleyan.
Yeah, most of our rivalries that we were picking out for these card sets were those natural in-conference rivalry games where you maybe play twice a year. This is one that we wanted to highlight. That's one of the strong non-conference rivalries out there, WashU, Illinois Wesleyan. So 2 pictures of their gyms. They both have nice facilities. And it was a very good game. They usually are always very good games when these 2 teams play. WashU got the 63-61 victory last season.
Okay, Matt, we mentioned John Jay earlier with the Content Kings card. Here's the team base card for John Jay, and they are the Bloodhounds.
Yeah, a Cognac conference team like Hunter. They also are from New York City. And we talked about their broadcast earlier this season. John Jay's a team that has been in the mix at times in the Cognac Conference, has made some NCAA tournaments. And yeah, check out their games and check out their broadcast for sure.
All right, the Springfield Pride are up next.
Springfield, a NUMAC team. We had MIT, I think, earlier in the NUMAC. They're from Springfield, Massachusetts. They're a team that had some runs at the NUMAC, and last couple of years there hasn't been that. So we're looking in the future of can Springfield, get back towards that top couple of spots in the NUMAC conference.
From the NUMAC to the UMAC, Northland Lumberjacks.
Exactly, Zach. Ashland, Wisconsin for Northland in the UMAC. Those are like the teams in like the northern parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota that you don't really ever want to drive to, but someone has to. And there's good teams out there, and Northland is one of these UMAC teams.
All right, Matt, to the NJAC now, the Rowan Profs.
Glassboro, New Jersey for Rowan. The NJAC, as you said, New Jersey Athletic Conference. Is my question here, is Rowan back as a national power? They were, very strong in kind of like the 90s. I think of that as kind of like an NJAC kind of heyday for the whole conference. But I feel like that the league was back on the rise last year. 3 teams in the NCAA tournament. Rowan was a tournament host. They made the Sweet 16. I feel like they're a program that has now maybe gotten their footing under them once again. Not that they were bad or a bad conference probably, but they're back on that national stage as being one of the teams to go through if you're in the NCAA tournament.
All right, the Grove City Wolverines are our next card.
Grove City out of the President's Athletic Conference, Grove City, Pennsylvania. The President's Conference is usually kind of like that Western Pennsylvania type of a conference.
CCNY, the Beavers.
Becoming a Cognac-heavy episode, Zach. Another New York City team. CCNY is the City College of New York, and this whole conference is really residing there in New York City.
All right, St. Mary's, Minnesota Cardinals are our next card.
Yeah, back out to Minnesota for the MIAC. They're from Winona, Minnesota, and last year I kind of think of St. Mary's as a team that could beat anyone or could lose to anyone depending on the night and depending on how you got them.
All right, Matt, here we have one from the Unsung Heroes set. Scott Brown Jr., he's the championships coordinator on the NCAA. We've talked about the national committee. They're working with Scott Brown Jr. here, who, kind of helps with the committee, put the championship together, and we had a heck of a Final Four last year.
Yeah, heck of a Final Four, heck of a tournament all year long. So shouts to Scott Brown Jr. For all the work that went into that. Division III is a great showcase of college basketball talent, and I think we saw that in last year's tournament. And it's Scott and people like Scott who helped to put that together and make sure that things go smoothly and well. And I think last year, in my perspective, it was really our one of our first times experiencing it with any sort of minuscule amount of behind the scenes depth. And I thought it was fantastic Final Four weekend and tournament.
Yeah, shouts to Scotty there. All right, Merchant Marine Mariners up next.
Skyline Conference team. They're from Kings Point, New York.
And wrapping up Pac-29, the Edgewood Eagles.
Northern Athletic College Conference for Edgewood, and they're in Madison, Wisconsin. And I think they are the top-rated school in Madison, probably. The only one you think of anyway.
Well, yeah. All right, on to our final pack of the episode, Pack 30. Matt, here we have the Redlands Bulldogs, and I think this photo is a little bit indicative of the type of game you get when you're going to play Redlands.
Down there in Southern Cal in the SCIAC, Redlands, California. They're going to be a GLI team, so it'll be interesting to see them play Middlebury and Oshkosh, I think is the schedule. And I think that style You like to see them match up with a Wisconsin Oshkosh type style where Redlands is maybe a little bit more run and press at times. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that happens. I'll be interested to see that firsthand.
That'll be interesting. Looking forward to that one. All right, up next we have the Keystone Giants.
Yeah, they're in the AEC, Atlantic East Conference, from La Plume, Pennsylvania. I was expecting them to be the Cops, but they were the Giants. So they're not the Keystone Cops, which is probably better for them.
Also not Keystone Light. All right, moving on. UW Whitewater Warhawks, one of our Final Four participants.
Couple of teams with deep runs. UW Whitewater here. We had Nichols in an Elite Eight last year. Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference for UW Whitewater. They were in the Final Four. They were, I think, a team that was poised, in my mind, to make another deep run, both in their conference and in the national tournament. But we did get an announcement in the last few weeks that their head coach, Pat Miller, was retiring, stepping aside, and that their, I think, assistant is being named interim. So we'll have to see if that disrupts anything. I think they had a lot of good players in line to return next season, so I'm not expecting a big disruption, but it's always interesting on a coaching change to see what might happen there. But a great team, a very entertaining team at the Final Four, and they delivered. I kind of maybe thought of them as the underdog with those 4 teams, but they were not that once you saw them in person with those other 3 teams.
Absolutely. All right, another Content Kings card here, Matt. We have Ryan Scott, the D3Hoops.com lead columnist, and D3 Hoops savant.
Another great card, another great person. I've been waiting for this Content Kings card here for Ryan Scott. As you said, he knows everything about D3 Hoops. I mean, all those guys that work at the .com and post there and publish there, they just know so much about Division III and Division history. They've done it for so many years. We've been kind of along as well, but we don't. I mean, I feel like our national perspective has increased the last few years. These guys have been doing it for a long, long time, and Ryan is a wealth of information. He's puts up tremendous columns around the nation, etc. Always good to read. Always good to hear his thoughts on Twitter. Always good to hear his thoughts on Hoopsville, about maybe his top 25 and the dubious double take and double down and deep dive and whatever else the fourth 3Ds are. Because I think he thinks about the top 25 in different ways than I do. So I'm always interested to see how he views the landscape, and I always value that opinion, even if it's not always the same as mine.
And he played along in our weekly picks all season long, and
yes,
I think he beat both of us.
He was a great picker on our pick slate, and I'm pretty sure he got the crown. So Content Kings and D3 Datacast pick Kings is Ryan Scott.
Okay, the Bluffton Beavers here, Matt.
Bluffton, Ohio, from the HCAC, Zach. Probably not too far away from you, actually. Maybe just a couple hours or so down south into Ohio is where you can find Bluffton as part of the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Conference.
The Skidmore Thoroughbreds are up next, Matt. How do you feel about the Thoroughbreds?
The Thoroughbreds, it's a great nickname. And they're out of the Liberty League, and they're out of Saratoga Springs.
Okay, Framingham State Rams up next.
Framingham State out of the MASCAC. When you see a team that's like something state, I always have to think, is it the SUNYAC? Is it one of like the Vermont teams or New Hampshire teams? No, also the MASCAC is maybe one of those that big conferences that have state schools out there in Massachusetts. So Framingham, Massachusetts is where the Framingham State Rams are.
Another major moments here, Matt. Then this one is a major moments card, as it's also a relic.
Yeah,
looking back at the overtime game between Elmhurst and North Park that was delayed due to a shattered backboard. It took an hour and a half to find someone who could get the extra backboard and put it in place so the game could resume. So that gave you plenty of time to scoop up a little bit of the debris here to help facilitate making this relic card.
I was actually able to drive from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Elmhurst, Illinois, get my little dustpan out,
to the western Chicago suburbs,
and then get back. And then I watched the end of overtime after that because there was a delay. I think it was Ocean Johnson sent it down here and busted the glass. And it's just not something you see very often. And it was Entertaining, I'm sure, for the event staff was kind of like, oh my goodness, we got to like figure out how to fix this and get a person like in here who can install it correctly and everything. So, I'm sure it was a nightmare for some and it was entertaining for others. I think eventually North Park did win the game, unfortunately for the home Blue Jays there. But that was kind of an interesting night to follow that action as it went along through Division III land.
Yeah, I think entertaining turned to irritating pretty quickly, especially if you were more of the North Park persuasion there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
hey, at least they didn't have a long drive home, so they weren't, too
yeah,
delayed.
yeah.
All right, the Chapman Panthers are up next.
Another team from Southern Cal in the SCIAC, and they're from Orange, California.
Next card. Oh, Matt, you said it's interesting how some of these randomly come out. We're going back to back with the Panthers here, this time from SUNY Purchase.
Yeah, a Skyline Conference team from Purchase, New York, and Purchase is kind of like north of Manhattan to get to like the Connecticut border. It's kind of like where Purchase is, I think.
Next up, the Marion Sabres.
Marion is out of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, in the Northern Athletics Conference, and it's kind of like the southern tip of Lake Winnebago. And I think on like the western end of Lake Winnebago is where Oshkosh is, and I think Appleton, Wisconsin, is around maybe like the north. So I'm kind of learning my Wisconsin geography and where my D3 hoops teams are through this project, and also through like the D3 hoops Wisconsin gym tour that like Greek Tragedy went on. So a lot of D3 teams in Wisconsin. We've talked about that. And Marion was one of those kind of in that Lake Winnebago region. And Zach is frozen, so I'm going to finish out this card with Muskingum Muskies. They're from the OAC. They're from New Concord, Ohio. OAC, one of the strongest conferences in the country. It's definitely like a top 10 conference for sure, and one of the strongest conferences in Region 7 as well. And we'd definitely like to shout out our Patreon subscribers. Thank you for the support. Thank you for your continued support of our show, of our episode, for helping to keep d3datacast.com ad-free to users. The data that is presented on that site, the regional ranking data, the efficiency ratings data, the conference ratings, ad-free and available to everyone. So thank you to the supporters here that are joining the Patreon at either the Good Job Team or the Great Job Team tier. We really appreciate it. If you would like to support us, you can check out the Patreon. It should be in the link below. If you cannot afford the Patreon, that's cool. Click subscribe to the YouTube channel if you can. That helps us out a lot. And that's one thing you can do if you are looking to support us, but maybe financially it's not a thing that you can do right now. That's definitely okay. We appreciate anyone who views, anyone who comments, anyone who interacts with us for sure. So definitely appreciate the shout out. And I think that's going to be it for this episode right now. And for Zach Snyder, I am Matt Snyder, and that is a Good Job Team.